Welcome to the world of translated Chinese horror, where the most mysterious and chilling tales are recounted. Today, I present to you a story. I hope you have moments of suspense and relaxation. My adoptive mother took me in, purely out of a desire to change her luck and bring good fortune to her family. But, ironically, from the moment I stepped into their house, their luck not only didn't improve but steadily declined. Little did they know, I had been dead for a long time. What they were trying to borrow was, in reality, the fate of a ghost, someone who had departed from this world. And borrowing the fortune of the dead comes at the cost of one's own life. I am the one who emerged from the womb of a corpse. As soon as I was born, my mother passed away. My grandmother was heartbroken and planned to bury my mother according to custom. But then, a glimmer of hope appeared when she felt something still moving in my mother's womb. With a shattered heart, my grandmother made the painful decision to cut open my mother's abdomen, trying to save her infant grandchild. But alas, it was too late. When I was taken out of my mother's womb, my skin was already purple, my breath had stopped, and there was no sign of life. My grandmother collapsed, intending to bury me and my mother together so the two could rest in peace. But miraculously, my eyes suddenly opened to her horror. From that moment on, my existence became a secret that my grandmother buried. She hid me in the old house, not daring to send me to school. Because if I went to school, people would quickly notice my horrifying difference. I had no heartbeat, didn't breathe, and my skin was as pale as a corpse, completely lacking the rosy color of blood. From a young age, I was only accustomed to sleeping in the old coffin. Whenever guests came to the house, my grandmother hid me carefully, not allowing me to go outside. Thus, I lived reclusively in my grandmother's house for 10 years. Although I didn't attend school, she taught me to read, showed me television, and told me about the vast world out there. When I was with her, I felt no different from other normal children. But as I grew older, my grandmother became increasingly frail and aged. Although only 60 years old, she looked like she was in her 70s or 80s. I thought my life and hers would remain peaceful forever. Until one day, two uninvited guests shattered the tranquility. Two figures, as pale and white as I was, their faces blurred with indistinguishable features. One dressed in black, the other in white, both wielding chains in their hands. The one in black spoke in a high-pitched, strange voice, difficult to distinguish as male or female, and rebuked my grandmother. "Granny Vong, you dare hide the child for so long. You hide her in a coffin, using magic to conceal her soul, making it impossible for us to find her. Granny Vong, you know she is a stillborn. You have committed the crime of tampering with fate." The voice of the person in black buzzed and echoed, like sharp needles piercing my head. The heat radiating from the iron chains seemed to scorch everything. Trembling, I hid behind my grandmother, seeking protection. The one in white sighed, their voice also indistinct in gender, but more gentle. "Granny Vong, why make it so hard on yourself? We've had dealings before, why waste your lifespan to raise such a child?" Hearing the one in white speak, I forgot my fear. I looked up at my grandmother's aged and weathered face and suddenly understood everything. I opened my mouth, but before I could utter a word, tears streamed down my face. My grandmother sighed, stroked my head, and said lovingly, "What are you crying for, silly child?" Then she turned to the two in black and white. "I know I have committed a great sin, and after death, I will willingly atone for it. I will not reincarnate. You used to appreciate my abilities. I can stay in the underworld and work for you." They looked at each other, were silent for a moment, and then said, "We must report this to the King of Hell." With that, they vanished into thin air. I was both heartbroken by the price my grandmother had to pay for me and resentful that I couldn't be like other normal people. I wept in her arms. After that, the two did not return to find me. When I was 12 years old, my grandmother quietly passed away. The night before she left, she held my hand tightly, murmuring many things. "Child, your mother wasn't really my biological daughter. I found her when she was only 3 or 4 years old." My grandmother opened her eyes wide, smiling kindly. "I'm going to see your mother soon. You have to take good care of yourself from now on." Her old, trembling hands placed a jade pendant into my hand. When you wear this pendant, you will be no different from a living person with breath and a heartbeat. I trembled as I took the jade pendant, my eyes filled with tears as I looked at her. The next day, my grandmother smiled and breathed her last breath. After she passed away, not long after, people discovered me. Although the village chief didn't understand why my grandmother had hidden me for so many years, he still took me to the orphanage in the town. I stayed in the orphanage for 2 years before being adopted by adoptive parents. The first time I met them, I sensed that their appearances were not good. The man, about 40 years old, had a hooked nose and dark skin, but a pale face, which is the appearance of someone with an unjust heart. The woman looked over 30, with high, hollow cheeks, triangular eyes, and a sharp, cunning gaze, making her unapproachable. Not only that, but they also had a thick black aura swirling around them. As soon as the woman saw me, she smiled and took my hand, her tone fake. "Oh, what a lovely child, skin as white and translucent as jade." But after only a few seconds, she trembled and released my hand. Why are this child's hands so cold? It's like touching a block of ice. The director of the orphanage quickly explained that I had been cold since I was a child. "Director, is there any mistake in this child's birthday? Is it the hour of the ox on the 14th day of the 7th lunar month?" The adoptive father hurriedly asked. The director was stunned and then nodded. The note my grandmother had left behind stated exactly that. The adoptive father praised "good, good" repeatedly and hurriedly took me away. The director saw that their family conditions were not bad, so she agreed to let me go with them. But who knew, as soon as I got into the car, the smile on the adoptive mother's face disappeared. She looked at me coldly, frowning. "Why do you look so flirtatious at such a young age? You sit away from me. I feel a chill sitting near you. Are you sick or something? Your face is as pale as a ghost. It's so unlucky to look at you." The adoptive mother muttered, cursing, and sat far away from me. I lowered my head and remained silent. I could feel the undisguised malice on her. And malice is my favorite delicacy. This is a secret that even my grandmother never knew. My mouth moved slightly, absorbing all the malice from the adoptive mother, feeling as if the tips of my fingers had become a little rosier. "That's enough. Shut your mouth. Don't forget the orphanage will call back to check. What if this child says something?" The adoptive father glanced at the adoptive mother, then turned to pretend to be kind and smile at me. "Kyo Kyo, what a nice name. Your aunt is sharp-tongued but soft-hearted. Rest assured, my house welcomes you very much. Oh, I forgot to say, we also have a younger brother named Vong Tianho. You two will definitely have fun living together." The adoptive mother curled her lips and snorted, if it weren't for needing to borrow this child's luck. She suddenly realized she had misspoke and quickly shut her mouth. I lowered my head, the corners of my mouth slowly rising. Borrowing the luck of the dead comes at the cost of one's own life. The adoptive father's house was a normal apartment in a mid-range apartment complex. A 3-bedroom, 1 living room apartment, a typical layout. The adoptive mother pointed to the half-open storage room. "From now on, you'll stay in there." Seeing me looking at her, the adoptive mother sneered. "What, you think the room is too small? An orphan like you with no father or mother only deserves to stay in there." She pushed me, throwing open the door to the storage room. A musty smell rushed straight to my nose. Mold clung to the walls due to the dampness. There was only a dim yellow incandescent light bulb on the ceiling, surrounded by insects. The room was less than 2 square meters, with only an old bed and a yellowed mattress on the floor. The storage room had no windows, cramped and extremely confined. "Thank you for preparing such a good room for me." The adoptive mother's face darkened. "Who are you mocking?" I shook my head, feigning innocence. "Actually, I really like staying in places like this. I've slept in a coffin since I was a child. I'm used to being in places with heavy energy. This room is the best for me. Remember this, we didn't take you in to be a princess. From now on, you have to do all the housework. By the way, there's a pile of dirty clothes to wash today." "Oh, your hair is too long, it wastes water to wash it. I'll cut some off for you." The adoptive mother stared at my hair, her eyes flashing with calculation. Of course, I knew what she needed my hair for. Living with my grandmother for so many years, meeting all kinds of people, I knew quite a few things. To borrow luck, you must obtain the hair and date of birth of the person being borrowed from. I obediently let the adoptive mother cut my hair. She held my hair, her attitude a little gentler. I guess you're obedient. After washing the clothes, you don't have to cook dinner tonight. She pointed to the basket of dirty clothes in the bathroom. The pile of clothes was as high as a mountain, with a dozen pairs of yellowed men's underwear on top. Next to it was clearly a washing machine. What are you standing there for? Wash them quickly. The adoptive mother pushed me. But little did she know, clothes touched by the dead bring bad luck to those who wear them. I obediently sat down on the stool and began to wash the clothes. At this time, the adoptive mother stepped out satisfied. But before she could go far, I heard her scream. I peeked out and saw the adoptive mother sprawled on the ground, holding her forehead, blood streaming down, screaming miserably. The adoptive father hurriedly helped her up, scolding, "Why aren't you careful?" It turned out that she had only taken a few steps when she slipped and fell, her head hitting the sharp edge of the table. The wound on the adoptive mother's forehead was very deep, and fresh blood poured out nonstop. She groaned in pain. The adoptive father had no choice but to take her to the hospital. When he returned home, the adoptive father was angry. Medical examinations are so expensive these days, costing thousands. It's all because this woman is so careless. We already have so much debt, and she doesn't know how to save me money. The adoptive mother whispered, "Don't we have an extra child to borrow luck from?" The adoptive father hurriedly covered her mouth. "Keep it down. What if that child hears and runs away? It's not easy to find someone compatible with our family these days. We were lucky last time. My friend's daughter was born on that exact day. My hearing is many times more sensitive than normal people. I can clearly hear sounds from dozens of meters away. No matter how softly they whisper, I can still hear them clearly." It turned out that the adoptive parents used to live in extreme poverty. They had consulted fortune tellers several times, and they all said that their fate had no fortune, and they would not be able to become wealthy in the future. Their whole life would be filled with poverty and bad luck. But my adoptive father was unwilling to accept this. He learned from many people and found out about the cruel method of borrowing luck. At that time, he learned the date of birth of his friend's daughter, had evil intentions, and borrowed the girl's luck. As a result, in just 2 short years, he went from being dirt poor to becoming middle class. However, that child also had her luck drained. 2 years later, the girl died of illness. Before she died, she had to endure all kinds of pain and suffering. My adoptive parents never once visited her. The adoptive father ran out of luck to borrow, and the company began to encounter misfortune, accumulating debt. They began to inquire about the birthdays of orphan children and found me. I obediently washed the clothes, the corners of my mouth slowly rising. Before she died, my grandmother told me that I was not accepted by the heavenly law, so I should not do bad things, and I should not harm others at will. But if I encountered those who did things against their conscience, I could punish them. The adoptive mother came in and was pleased to see me obediently washing the clothes, but before she could finish her sentence, she slipped and fell headfirst into the toilet. The adoptive mother struggled to get up, her face covered in filth, about to explode with anger. Seeing me staring at her without blinking, she flew into a rage, scolding, "What are you looking at? Be careful, I'll gouge your eyes out. Auntie, your toilet isn't clean. There are enoki mushrooms on your head." I sincerely reminded her. The adoptive mother screamed and hurriedly went to wash her face. But she didn't know that the misfortune of this family had only just begun. I wanted them to vomit out all the luck they had once sucked in, little by little. That evening, Vong Tianho, their son, came home from school. He was short and fat, his face dark and greasy with oil. He was only 10 years old, but already acted mature, unlike other children. As soon as he saw me, he stared at me, not bothering to ask about his mother's bandaged head. "Mom, is this the older sister you brought home from the orphanage for me?" Vong Tianho's eyes darted around, lingering on my chest for a few seconds. The adoptive mother seemed to dote on him very much, nodding and saying, "Tianho, Mom made your favorite pork knuckle." Eat it quickly while it's hot. Vong Tianho cheered and picked up a pork knuckle to gnaw on, not even bothering to wash his hands. I reached out to try a pork knuckle, and the adoptive mother slapped the back of my hand hard. She hit me very hard, and my hand turned red immediately. What are you eating? What's a girl doing eating meat? Let me tell you, the meat is for the men in the house to eat, so the men can do great things in the future. Vong Tianho gave me the gnawed-off pig's feet, smiling. Sister, I invite you to eat. I lowered my head and looked at the pork knuckle he had gnawed clean. The only thing left was his smelly saliva. Eat it quickly, sister. Mom said women are only allowed to eat the leftovers of men. Vong Tianho said those arrogant words without fear. But as soon as he finished speaking, his face turned red. He grabbed his neck, gasped for breath, and twitched. Tianho is choking. The adoptive mother exclaimed in panic. The adoptive father was also alarmed and hurriedly patted Vong Tianho's back. His face had turned liver-colored, one eye bulging out. The adoptive mother was anxious, tears welling up in her eyes. The adoptive father patted him for a while before hearing him gulp and spit out a piece of meat. Vong Tianho, who had just escaped death, was no longer as arrogant as before, but cried out in fear. Seeing the whole family flustered, I smiled softly. If Vong Tianho continued to eat, he would be even more unlucky. He choked while drinking soup and bit his tongue while eating, biting off a piece of meat. Vong Tianho cried out in pain, his mouth constantly bleeding. The adoptive father and mother hurriedly took him to the hospital. When they returned, the adoptive father's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot, having spent another 3,000. Okay, stop talking, the child didn't do it on purpose. The adoptive mother comforted Vong Tianho with heartache. Besides, we're going to borrow that child's luck tonight. The mother lowered her voice and said quietly. At this time, the adoptive father's furrowed brows relaxed. At exactly 12 o'clock at night, I heard the adoptive parents talking outside the living room, so I pushed the door open slightly, leaving a small gap. The adoptive parents were sitting cross-legged outside the living room, with a red bowl in front of them. The adoptive mother took a lighter and burned my hair, and the hair burned into ashes, falling into the bowl. I looked at them coldly, blowing a breath towards the living room. The adoptive mother suddenly shivered. Old Vong, why is it so cold today? She said, her mouth exhaling white smoke. The adoptive father was also freezing, but still urged, stop talking nonsense, hurry up. I looked at them gloomily. I had absorbed quite a bit of malice from the whole family and had become much stronger in just a short period of time. The adoptive mother didn't dare to hesitate for long and took out a yellow charm. She bit her fingertip, squeezed out blood, and wrote a few evil characters on the charm, then burned it to ashes. Finally, the adoptive father poured water into the bowl. They picked up the bowl, each taking a big gulp. I quietly grinned. This is something from the dead. A few minutes later, the adoptive mother's eyes suddenly widened. She grabbed her throat, stuttering, "A." The adoptive father pointed at her throat in panic, stammering, "Wife, it seems like there's something wiggling in your throat." The adoptive mother suddenly retched and spat out a pile of small, long, white worms from her mouth. The worms crawled all over the floor, leaving behind sticky trails of slime. The adoptive mother's face turned pale, screaming, "Why is there this thing in my mouth?" The adoptive father frantically stomped on the worms on the ground. Not long after, he had killed them all, leaving only a pile of blood. The pool of blood slowly gathered into the shape of a human face. The adoptive father took a closer look, stunned. It was the face of the little girl they had killed. The adoptive parents were so scared that they fell to the ground. But before long, the worms and blood disappeared completely, as if they had never existed. Wife, was that just a hallucination? The adoptive father swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The adoptive mother paled, stammering, "It must have been a hallucination." I laughed silently. That's not a hallucination, but my ability. I can make people see the things they fear the most. I quietly closed the door, but I believed that they would definitely sleep in extreme terror all night. Sure enough, early the next morning, I saw the adoptive mother staggering, her face turning blue-black, without a trace of the rosy complexion of yesterday. The adoptive father was no different, his face as white as paper. Wang Tianho laughed loudly, pointing at his parents' faces. "Your faces look exactly like the dead people in the funeral home." The adoptive father's face turned purple with anger, not knowing where to vent it, and was about to hit him when the adoptive mother stopped him. "Tianho is still so young, what does he know?" the adoptive mother said weakly, but when she saw me, her face changed immediately. "You still haven't gone to cook breakfast. Are you waiting for me to make it for you?" I obediently went to cook breakfast. After all, eating food cooked by the dead would make their misfortune come faster. While cooking, Wang Tianho deliberately harassed me. First, he deliberately touched my butt. Seeing me look over calmly, Wang Tianho shouted, "What are you looking at?" "Mom said women are born to be played with by men. You were adopted by my parents, so you have to listen to me. I can do whatever I want to you." Wang Tianhu, still in elementary school, mimicked adults with such pronouncements. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him. His whole family was about to die anyway. Seeing my lack of response, Wang Tianhu suddenly snatched the pan of frying eggs and flung it at my face, the scalding oil splashing all over. My face was severely burned, blisters forming instantly. Far from being remorseful, Wang Tianhu just laughed. "Who told you to ignore me?" My adoptive parents rushed over, my adoptive father scolding Wang Tianhu for fear I would run away. My adoptive mother pulled him behind her, saying, "Tianhu is just playing around. Qiao Qiao only got a little burn. It's nothing." Wang Tianhu, hiding behind her, stuck his tongue out at me. I glared at him, and he quickly lowered his head, intimidated by my stare. My adoptive father, unwilling to spend money on a hospital visit, simply bandaged me up haphazardly. As he did so, he said, "Qiao Qiao, don't blame your brother. He's just teasing you." I shook my head. I don't blame him. Why blame someone who's about to die? Besides, I didn't feel any pain. I could now control the healing time of my injuries. If I wanted, they could disappear instantly. My adoptive father, pleased, said, "I'll buy you cake when I get off work, okay?" He was probably trying to appease me. Seeing me nod, he smiled even more brightly. That evening, my adoptive father came home with a dark expression. Wang Tianhu started whining for cake, and for the first time, my adoptive father snapped at him. "What are you yelling about? The company's about to go bankrupt. What cake are you talking about?" Wang Tianhu was stunned into silence. My adoptive mother quickly intervened. "Why are you yelling at the child?" My adoptive father said irritably, "I went to the company today, and that dog of a manager ran off with the money. He took all the company's working capital." He ground his teeth in fury. My adoptive mother's face paled upon hearing this, seemingly only then realizing the gravity of the situation. She murmured, "How could this happen? We clearly borrowed luck yesterday." My adoptive father shot her a sharp look, silencing her. He wearily slumped onto the old sofa, rubbing his temples as if to dispel a persistent headache. I was planning to use the remaining capital to try and weather the storm, but it seems we won't be able to hold on. He looked at me, then whispered anxiously in my adoptive mother's ear, "It's probably not enough time yet. Don't be too impatient." My adoptive mother nodded repeatedly, then turned and ordered me, "What are you standing there for? Go do the laundry." Wang Tianhu swaggered after me into the cramped bathroom, brazenly ignoring my presence as he pulled down his pants, his private parts exposed. He laughed crudely, flinging his dirty underwear at me. "Go wash these. My mom says women have to do these things." I grinned back at him, unafraid. Wang Tianhu, seeing that I wasn't angry and seemed docile, smugly assumed I was easy to bully. His eyes darted around mischievously, then he suddenly peed directly into the basin of soaking clothes. The smile vanished from my face, and darkness clouded my vision as a surge of rage welled up. A moment later, the fluorescent light above flickered and died with a pop. This was immediately followed by a loud crash as the bulb shattered, sending sharp shards of glass raining down, some of which struck Wang Tianhu's groin. He screamed in terror, a sound as piercing as a pig being slaughtered. My adoptive parents, hearing his cry, rushed in to find Wang Tianhu unconscious in a pool of blood, his most prized possession now a bloody mess. My adoptive mother shrieked and nearly fainted. With no thought for anything else, they hastily carried Wang Tianhu downstairs, intending to take him to the hospital. But as soon as they opened the door, they were confronted by several burly, menacing men blocking their path. "Wang Jiajun, you owe my boss money. When are you going to pay up?" The leader, brandishing a gleaming cleaver, asked with a cold sneer. My adoptive father was frantic, sweating profusely. "Brother Lin, I'll pay right away. Please, let me take my son to the hospital first." He was on the verge of begging on his knees. Lin's men, seeing Wang Tianhu's bloody groin, laughed uproariously. "Old man, looks like your son's gonna be a eunuch, haha." My adoptive father's temples throbbed with rage, but he managed to restrain himself, pleading with them to let him take his son to the hospital. My adoptive mother was crying and screaming, and the leader, annoyed, signaled to his subordinates. They immediately seized her and threw her to the ground. Only then did she truly panic, begging for mercy. "Brother Lin, I have a pretty girl in the house. I just brought her home. Can we use her to pay off the debt?" The leader frowned, looking me up and down, then kicked my adoptive mother hard in the head. "What do you take me for? I kill people, but I never lay a hand on little girls, you understand." The kick sent her reeling, her nose bleeding. "Brother Lin, give me a week. I promise I'll bring you the money in a week," my adoptive father pleaded. The leader smiled faintly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You said the same thing before. Besides, I heard the money in your company was cleaned out. What money do you have to lie to me with now?" Seeing Wang Tianhu continuing to bleed, my adoptive father began to lose his composure. He whispered urgently to Brother Lin, "That girl is very lucky, lots of good fortune. I adopted her to absorb her luck. Don't worry, I borrowed her luck yesterday, and we'll have more and more money. I'll pay you double then." He couldn't help but grin smugly, but the smile was quickly extinguished by a powerful punch. "Are you kidding me?" I watched from inside, finding the scene rather amusing, and carried a small stool out to sit and munch on melon seeds. My adoptive father's face was swollen and bruised, and several teeth were broken. Finally, the men chopped off one of his fingers as a warning, giving him a final ultimatum of 1 week to pay off the debt, or else. My adoptive father screamed in agony. I finished my bag of melon seeds and leisurely dusted myself off. My adoptive father, with no time to worry about his injuries, hurriedly carried Wang Tianhu to the hospital. It was then that I stepped outside and saw a sleek, black car parked downstairs, looking very luxurious. The same burly men were now bowing and scraping to the person inside, their attitude completely different from their earlier brutality. The car window slowly lowered, revealing a beautiful face, a teenager of about 16 or 17, with delicate features and a harmonious appearance, yet looking thin and pale. I looked directly into the person's eyes. The teenager saw me, and a strange light flickered in their eyes. Soon after, the car drove away. That night, when my adoptive parents returned, they looked like corpses. It turned out that Wang Tianhu had lost too much blood, and the doctors couldn't save his genitals. They recommended complete removal. When my adoptive mother saw me, her madness flared up again. She grabbed my hair, grinding her teeth as she cursed, "It's all your fault. You cursed thing. It's your fault my son was injured. Why don't you transfer your luck to us? Why don't you just die?" She gripped my head tightly, slamming it against the wall repeatedly. Soon, my blood stained the wall red. I didn't say a word until my head cracked open, and my adoptive father frantically stopped her. "All right." My adoptive mother slumped to the ground, panting like a wild animal after a fight. I let the blood run down my forehead, staining my eyes red, and stared at them blankly. My pupils were unnaturally dark, filling almost the entire eye, giving me an eerie appearance. I pointed at my adoptive mother, then slowly turned to my adoptive father and asked in a cold voice, "Dad, what does she mean?" My adoptive father was so unnerved by my gaze that he trembled for a long time, unable to speak. "That night, I saw you too, burning my hair," I said, my voice getting softer and softer, the blood on my forehead flowing more and more, the wound looking grotesque. "What were you trying to do?" I slowly approached them, and immediately my face changed, becoming the face of the little girl they had tormented to death years ago. I began to cry deafeningly, a piercing, chilling sound like an abandoned newborn. It hurts, it hurts. My adoptive parents were terrified, their faces pale. Don't come here, don't come here. My adoptive mother screamed in horror, scrambling backward. I stepped in front of her, squatted down, and took a deep breath. The dense fear surrounding them was what I loved to consume most. I could feel my face becoming rosier, even my body becoming warmer. I was finally experiencing the so-called warmth of the living. Mom, what's wrong? Look again. I'm Chow Chow, I said caringly, my voice as sweet as honey. Finally, my adoptive parents regained some clarity. My adoptive father gasped for breath, his face contorted with horror. His eyes were bloodshot, muttering to himself, "Why is it taking so long this time? Last time we won the lottery the next day." He stared at me, as if wanting to devour me alive. But I was happy, because the more I was hated, the more malice I could absorb. My abilities also became stronger as a result. My adoptive mother suddenly croaked, her voice full of calculation. The master said, "There's an even faster way, right?" My adoptive father paused for a moment, then they both looked at me, their eyes even darker. "Right? I forgot, there's a faster way." They stared intently at me, looking as terrifying as hungry beasts. My adoptive parents tied me up tightly. My adoptive mother looked at me with a strange expression, swallowing hard. The master said, "There's an even more vicious way, which is to eat the person whose luck you borrowed. If this bitch has heard everything, then we don't need to act anymore. Husband, cut her flesh and eat it. Tianhu will recover immediately." My adoptive father grabbed a large knife, his expression somber. "Xiao Xiao, don't blame us. We were going to let you live for 2 more years, but this time it's too urgent. If the gangsters don't get the money, they'll kill our whole family. You're a good girl, I'll burn paper money for you." My adoptive father trembled as he walked towards me with the knife. I looked up and smiled at him. "Dad, you'll be even more unlucky after eating my flesh. Do you know what kind of meat you can't eat? The meat of the dead." My adoptive father was completely insane, no longer listening to me. He cut a large piece of flesh from my arm, fresh blood flowing to the ground. He picked up the piece of meat and chewed it like a ravenous wolf. I calmly stared at them. At this moment, I didn't know who was the real ghost. They seemed more like the dead than I did. My adoptive mother also lunged forward, slashing a large gash on my body. But she felt it was too slow, so she hugged me tightly, gnawing on me like a madwoman. I looked at their blood-soaked figures, no different from demons, and couldn't help but sigh. It's a good thing I'm dead. If I were a normal girl, how much pain and fear would I be feeling now? Finally, they stopped. My adoptive father wiped the blood from his lips and laughed maniacally. "Tianhu is saved. Our company is saved. I need to go buy lottery tickets." He rushed out, but before he could even step out the door, he tripped and fell to the ground. He screamed in agony. My adoptive mother rushed over to check, only to see the knife, which he had been holding tightly, was now plunged straight into his eye, piercing through the back of his head. It turned out that he was too hasty, grabbed the knife and rushed out, but slipped and fell. The knife plunged into his eye as a result. My adoptive mother cried out in despair, wanting to take him to the hospital, but my adoptive father convulsed for a moment, then spat out a mouthful of blood and died. I sneered, the wounds on my body beginning to heal. "I told you, eating the flesh of the dead requires a life in return. Do you know why you couldn't borrow my luck? Because I'm dead. Borrowing the luck of the dead requires a life in return." My adoptive mother couldn't believe her eyes. She saw the wounds on my body had completely disappeared, stared at me wide-eyed, then returned to her previous vicious expression, determined to pounce on me. But before she could even get close, the chandelier hanging above suddenly fell, hitting her head. My adoptive mother fell to the ground, blood pooling on the floor, gasping for breath. I stood in front of her, poking at the phone lying on the floor. "Your phone's ringing. It seems the hospital is calling. Do you want me to answer it for you?" At this point, my adoptive mother had no strength to speak, only able to stare at me. I kindly answered the phone for her, then turned on the speakerphone. Miss Sue, something's wrong. Tianhu suddenly had a post-operative infection. He's dead. Please come to the hospital. My adoptive mother's eyes widened, and a moment later, she died. Finally, they had paid for the evil they had done. I shook my head and was about to return to the orphanage when someone kicked open the door. It was the same gangsters from before. Among them, the man named Brother Lin, seeing the scene inside, quickly asked me, "Little girl, are you okay? Did they do anything to you?" He scratched his head, his voice full of regret. I knew this family wasn't good, so I intentionally reported it to the boss. I didn't want you to be with them. Standing behind Brother Lin was the teenager I had seen that afternoon. He was very tall, almost as tall as Brother Lin, but looked thin and pale. There was also dark energy around him, but it wasn't the disgusting kind that surrounded my adoptive parents. Before he could speak, he began to cough violently, a hacking cough that made everyone who heard it feel sorry for him. His pale face flushed a strange, vibrant red. "You give me a very special feeling." The teenager walked towards me, extending his hand. I noticed that his hand was also slender, with well-defined joints, looking very beautiful. "I'm Shin Wudong. Do you agree to come with me by Qiao?" I didn't sense any malice from him, only a bone-deep loneliness. While I was still hesitating, he took my hand. Shin Wudong's hand was as cold as mine. The dark energy on his body flowed down his arm, entering me. Although I didn't know what that dark energy was, it made me stronger. The way I looked at him suddenly changed, as if I were looking at a delicious cake laid out before me. Brother Lin scratched his head and said to me with a smile, "Our young master has been unlucky since he was little, nearly choking to death when drinking water. He's been kidnapped no less than 100 times. Every time he gets in a car, there's an accident. He's constantly sick." Many masters have been invited by the owner and his wife. They all concluded that the young master couldn't live past 20, no matter what lucky charms he wore. Shin Wudong looked at me calmly, without saying a word, but his eyes contained an indescribable expectation. Of course I agreed. I nodded. I agree. And so I followed Shin Wudong. In the car, I stared at his cheekbones. Suddenly, I realized that the dark energy on Shin Wudong's body was unevenly distributed, thick in some places and thin in others. The dark energy on Shin Wudong's neck was quite thick, and another place was his lips. But my grandma taught me not to kiss other people randomly. Even though I didn't know why, I had to listen to what my grandma taught me. I frowned awkwardly, finally deciding to press my face against Shin Wudong's neck. He seemed to be electrocuted, pushing me away, his voice cold. "What are you doing?" He seemed uncomfortable, but his ears were red. I had just absorbed some of the dark energy on his body and was licking my lips in satisfaction. Later, I learned that the dark energy on Shin Wudong's body wasn't something he was born with, but was caused by people deliberately harming him. But that's a story for later. For now, I had to start a new life at the Shin family's house.